Have you ever noticed that some stories refuse to stay buried? No matter how many years, marriages, or continents lie between the past and the present. Because that's exactly what happened the moment Prince Harry opened his mouth and hinted, just slightly, just enough, that he may still hold a torch for the one woman who slipped away, Chelsy Davy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And the moment those words escaped him, something shifted, something quiet, something dangerous. Because while the world was busy dissecting Harry's tone, Meghan's reaction, and the media headlines, one man was paying attention with a very different level of intensity. Sam Cutmore-Scott, Chelsy's husband, the hotelier known for privacy, restraint, and a polite but unmistakable steeliness. And Sam did not like what he heard, so he did something almost no one outside their circle expected. He warned Prince Harry, told him plainly, "Stay away." Now ask yourself, how does a man reach a point where he has to confront a prince about boundaries? What exactly did Harry say that crossed the line? And why does this moment matter right now, in a world where the Sussexes are desperate to maintain control of their narrative? Because here's the truth that few people ever want to admit. Sometimes the past doesn't haunt you. Sometimes you haunt the past. And sometimes you haunt the wrong person's marriage. But let's slow down. Let's rewind. Let's understand why this moment erupted in the way it did, why the tension traveled from London to Montecito like a shockwave, and why insiders say Harry never fully closed the door on Chelsy, even after Meghan stepped into his life. Because the story isn't just about love. It's about timing, regret, nostalgia, identity, power, and the one thing Harry has never been able to escape, his emotional impulsiveness. So let's begin at the exact moment the spark was lit. It was during what should have been a harmless conversation, the kind Harry gives all the time. Light, relaxed, simple. But then someone mentioned his past, mentioned old relationships, mentioned Chelsy, and Harry's guard slipped. He said something that sounded innocent at first, maybe even sweet. But beneath the surface, it was charged, loaded, revealing. What did he say? That being with Chelsy was the only time he felt truly normal. That it was a safe chapter, that she understood him in a way no one else ever had. At first, people laughed. The interviewers smiled. The room reacted with nostalgic warmth. But then reality sank in. Harry is married. Harry is a father. Harry has spent years telling the world that Meghan completed him, saved him, redefined him. So, why would he say that? Why now? Why, after years of insisting Meghan is the love of his life, did he slip back into a memory that belonged to another woman? And more importantly, did he realize who was listening? Because even when you think a moment is private, it rarely is when you're a public figure. People talk. Messages get passed. Whispers travel. It didn't take long for the comment to reach Sam Cutmore-Scott. And Sam is not your typical celebrity spouse. He isn't chasing fame. He isn't building a brand. He isn't trying to start a podcast or secure a Netflix deal. He is, by all accounts, a grounded businessman with a sharp sense of discernment and an even sharper instinct for protecting his family. So when Sam heard Harry's comment, something shifted for him too. Not anger, not jealousy, something more primal. A boundary. Because every man knows the difference between harmless nostalgia and emotional trespassing. And Sam decided, quietly, calmly, firmly, that Harry had crossed that line. But here's the twist that makes this moment so compelling. Sam didn't respond like the tabloids would. He didn't lash out, didn't rant, didn't threaten, didn't make a public statement. He handled it like a man who knows exactly who he is. He sent a message, a private one, not public, not dramatic, not theatrical, but clear, respectful, and final. Stay away. Do not contact Chelsy. Do not comment about her again. Do not create disruption in a family that has worked hard to remain separate from royal drama. Now, if you were Harry, how would you react to that? Would you apologize? Reflect? Step back? Or, like insiders claim, would you get defensive? Offended? Wounded? Because according to those close to the situation, Harry did not take it well. Not even close. The Duke's reaction was sharp, emotional, irritated, almost juvenile, some say. He insisted he meant no harm, that people were misinterpreting him, that Sam needed to relax. But the truth is simple. Harry struck a nerve. And Sam responded in the most adult way possible. What makes this more complex is Chelsy herself. Try to imagine, for a moment, the emotional geometry of this situation. You are Chelsy Davy. You dated Harry for years. You endured relentless press intrusion. You watched your private moments splashed across tabloids. You felt the pressure, the scrutiny, the expectations of a life you never wanted. Eventually, you walked away. You built a new life. You protected your peace. You found a partner who respects your boundaries. You became a mother. You created stability. And then, out of nowhere, your ex-prince, who is married with children, invokes your name on a public platform in a way that implies he still cherishes the past. How would that feel? Would it bother you? Embarrass you? Confuse you? Or would it simply irritate you that after all these years, he still hasn't learned to keep private things private? According to those who've known Chelsy for years, her reaction was a mix of frustration and disbelief. Not because she still has feelings for Harry, she doesn't, but because she values her peace more than anything else. And Harry's comment threatened that peace. This is where the tension folds back on itself. Harry says something nostalgic. People react. Sam intervenes. Chelsy freezes. Meghan erupts. Yes, Meghan. Because if you think Meghan was calm through all of this, think again. Insiders claim she was livid. Not at Sam. Not at Chelsy. At Harry. And who could blame her? Imagine your husband casually hinting that his ex gave him the peace he never found elsewhere. Not ideal. Not flattering. Not stabilizing. Some sources say Meghan confronted him immediately. Others say she waited until they were home. One claims she broke down in frustration, murmuring, "I will not compete with ghosts, Harry." But here's the part no one saw coming. Not even Harry. This wasn't the first time he'd said something like that. Not publicly, but privately. Hints. Confessions. Comments that suggested his past still tugged at him emotionally. There is a pattern here. One Meghan has noticed. One Sam has noticed. One Chelsy quietly avoids. And the people closest to Harry, the ones who've known him long before Meghan, understand this pattern too. Because Harry never truly processed losing Chelsy. He accepted it. He moved on. He fell in love again. But he didn't resolve it. And unresolved emotions have a strange way of resurfacing, especially under pressure, especially when life feels chaotic, especially when nostalgia becomes a form of escape. So when Harry hinted at that old, safe time, it wasn't just a slip of the tongue. It was the resurfacing of something deeper, something that pressed all the wrong buttons, in all the wrong people, at the worst possible moment. But here's where the story takes its most unexpected turn. Because what came next didn't come from Meghan, or Chelsy, or Sam. It came from someone else entirely. Someone observing from the shadows. Someone with far more at stake than a marriage or an old flame. And that unseen reaction is what transformed this from a small emotional slip into a full-scale crisis. But to understand that, we need to look at who was listening, and why their reaction matters more than anything Harry said. And once you hear what they did next, you'll understand why insiders say this moment changed Harry in ways he's still refusing to acknowledge. And the consequences? They're only just beginning. So who was listening? Who heard Harry's nostalgic confession and immediately understood what it meant, not just emotionally, but politically, strategically, and symbolically? The answer is simple, and yet devastating. The royal family. Because while Harry has stepped back, while he has insisted he is no longer bound by the institution, while he claims he is carving a new life far from Buckingham Palace, the palace still watches him. Closely, quietly, constantly, not out of affection, out of necessity, because Harry is a variable they can't control, a loose thread they can't stitch back, a ticking clock they can't reset. And when that thread starts tugging at his past, especially a past tied to Chelsy Davy, the woman insiders long believed he should have married, the palace pays attention. And this time, they paid attention immediately. Because if Harry is hinting, consciously or not, that he still carries feelings for a former partner, that creates a narrative the monarchy does not want to deal with. Think about it from their perspective. Harry and Meghan already fractured the royal brand. They've attacked the family, exposed internal conflicts, launched lawsuits, fed the press cycles with damaging claims. So imagine how the institution reacted when Harry effectively told the world, "My happiest days weren't with the woman I married, but with the one who got away." Now ask yourself, how can the monarchy spin that? How can Meghan's credibility survive that? How can Harry maintain the narrative that he escaped toxicity and found true freedom with Meghan if he's still emotionally reaching back into the past? The answer is, they can't spin it. Not easily. Not safely. Not without reopening decades-old speculation about Harry's emotional decision-making. And so the palace moved quickly, more quickly than people realize. Not publicly. Never publicly. The palace never reacts with visible heat. They do it with cold, controlled precision. A few quiet inquiries. A few calls to trusted insiders. A series of private assessments. Is Harry stable? Is Meghan going to exploit this? Will the press run with the Harry still loves Chelsy narrative? Because if they do, it undermines Meghan. It rewrites history. And it positions Chelsy, inadvertently, as the one that might have saved the monarchy. A storyline the firm absolutely does not want to resurrect. But here's the fascinating contradiction. Chelsy never wanted fame, never wanted royalty, never wanted the spotlight. She wanted freedom, privacy, a life built on her own terms. And now, ironically, Harry's slip threatens all of that again. This is when Sam steps forward fully, not as a jealous husband, but as a guardian of the life he and Chelsy built away from the crown. And his warning wasn't just about Harry talking too much. It was about protecting a boundary the monarchy once shattered. But let's pause for a moment. Let's zoom in on Harry right after the incident, because his emotional landscape is critical to understanding what happens next. People forget this, but Harry has always been emotionally raw, impulsive, reactive. He wears his heart on his sleeve, even when he shouldn't. That quality is endearing and destructive simultaneously. When Harry feels nostalgic, he doesn't filter. When he feels wounded, he doesn't hide it. When he feels misunderstood, he lashes out. When he feels cornered, he escalates. This comment about Chelsy was not strategic, not calculated, not planned. It was a crack in his emotional armor. A moment of vulnerability he couldn't retract, and the fallout was immediate. Because here's the contradiction that defines Harry's entire life. He wants privacy, but he overshares. He wants to protect Meghan, but he undermines her unintentionally. He wants peace, but he gravitates toward chaos. He wants closure, but he keeps revisiting unresolved chapters. This is why the Chelsy moment matters. It exposed something Harry has buried for years. That the chapter isn't as closed as he pretends. That he still romanticizes the version of himself he was with her. That he still longs for the simplicity, the anonymity, the freedom, the innocence. Not necessarily the woman, but the life. Because deep down, the truth is this. Harry loved Chelsy, but he loved the world she represented even more. A world where he wasn't a brand, a symbol, a controversy, an institution. A world where he was just Harry. No palace, no press, no pressure, no performance. Just a man, in love, trying to be normal. And now, decades later, he finds himself in the opposite condition. More public, more scrutinized, more reactive, more exposed, more emotionally unstable. And the irony? Chelsy got everything she wanted. Peace, privacy, stability, a grounded marriage, a quiet family life, success without spectacle. And Harry sees it. Not directly, not explicitly, but emotionally. Oh, he feels it. And that's why his slip mattered. Because it wasn't just a name. It was an admission. A window into his emotional fatigue. A break in the narrative he and Meghan spent years crafting. But now comes the twist no one expected. Because Harry's comment did not simply irritate Sam. It didn't just alarm Meghan. It didn't just interest the palace. It stirred something far deeper within Harry himself. A friction, an internal war, a dangerous pull toward nostalgia at the exact moment his marriage needed stability. And when a man feels trapped between the life he chose and the life he lost, he starts making decisions that don't make sense. This is how the spiral begins. But here's the part that takes this story from dramatic to seismic. Harry didn't just offend Sam. He didn't just unsettle Chelsy. He didn't just embarrass Meghan. He triggered a response from someone with more influence, more authority, and more emotional leverage over him than any of them. Someone who knows Harry's patterns better than he knows himself. Someone who knew exactly what Harry meant, even if Harry didn't. And when this person reacted, it changed the entire trajectory of the situation. Because their reaction wasn't emotional, wasn't angry, wasn't sentimental. It was strategic. calculated, cold, and it forced Harry to confront something he's avoided for years, the consequences of his own contradictions. So the question becomes, who was this person? What did they say? And why did it shake Harry more than Sam's warning ever could? The truth will pull you deeper into the story, because this reaction sets the stage for the entire storm that follows. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever witnessed a moment so small, so fleeting, so deceptively harmless, yet it detonates like a grenade the minute it hits the real world? Because that is exactly what happened when Prince Harry made one comment, just one, that spiraled into a storm involving his wife, his ex's husband, and even the royal family lurking behind the scenes like silent spectators at a chessboard. It didn't happen during a scandalous interview. It wasn't part of some tell-all memoir. There were no dramatic pauses, no trembling confessions, no explosive declarations. It was subtle, accidental, almost tender, and yet unforgettable. A single line, delivered casually, wrapped in nostalgia, packed with emotional dynamite. Let's walk into the moment step by step, because context here is everything. It starts with a question Harry has answered 1,000 times. What do you miss most about your life before royal duties? It's an innocent prompt. Soft. Predictable. The kind that typically earns a polished answer. Privacy, childhood, freedom. Something PR-friendly. But this time, Harry didn't give a PR answer. This time, he hesitated. Not long. Barely a breath. But long enough. You know that microsecond where a person dips into their real memories. Not the rehearsed interview ones, but the raw, unfiltered ones that live beneath the surface? That's where he went. And he emerged with a sentence that instantly changed the temperature of the room. He said, "My years with Chelsy were the only time I ever really felt normal." Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The startled kind. Because everyone in the room knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't about Chelsy. Not directly. It was about something deeper. It was about who he was when he was with Chelsy, who he wished he could still be, who he no longer recognizes when he looks at himself today. And that's why this tiny comment, this slip, hit like a thunderclap. Let's dissect why. First, the word normal. That's not a word Harry uses lightly. It is the word that defined his entire self-image crisis. Normal was what he was denied. Normal was what he chased. Normal was what he hoped Meghan could help him find. So for him to locate normal in the past, with an ex-lover, while married to someone else, well, that's not nostalgia. That's a wound speaking. There's a difference. Second, the timing. Harry didn't make this comment during a peaceful moment in his life. He made it during a season where his marriage was under pressure, his public reputation was unstable, and his emotional foundation was, according to insiders, frail. Third, the delivery. His voice softened. His tone shifted. His expression changed from guarded to reflective. This wasn't a statement. It was a confession. And someone in the room picked up on that immediately. Someone who took mental note. Someone who later repeated it quietly to someone else. Because that's how royal-adjacent gossip spreads. Not through tabloids. Through whispers. And these whispers traveled fast. Now let's zoom in even closer. Why Chelsy? Why did her name slip out of Harry's mouth at this particular moment? To understand that, you have to understand what Chelsy represented in Harry's life. She was the last link to the version of himself he lost. Before the royal machine. Before the pressure swallowed him. Before the identity crisis. Before the billionaire deals. Before the explosive interviews. Before the headlines. Before the Sussex brand. Back when he was simply Harry, the boy who laughed too loud. The teenager who broke the rules. The young man who wanted a real life. A private life. A life without constant surveillance. Chelsy understood that instinctively because she was built the same way. She hated the spotlight. Despised the cameras. Rejected royal expectations. Refused to play the role. And she encouraged Harry to live simply. With her, relationships were not PR-centered or reputation-dependent. They were emotional, organic, messy, human. She was his escape. His safe place. The only person who looked at him and didn't see a title, just a man. So when he said, normal, he wasn't talking about her. He was talking about himself. The himself he lost when he embraced a life rooted in conflict, exposure, lawsuits, and global spectacle. And this is where everything intensifies. Because Harry didn't realize that his microphone, physical or metaphorical, was wide open that day. His comment reached 3 people almost instantly. Meghan, Chelsy, Sam Cutmore-Scott. Let's take these reactions one at a time, because each one sets off a chain reaction. First, Meghan. You could argue she was the most emotionally affected. She sees herself as Harry's sanctuary, his partner, his savior, his new normal. So hearing Harry nostalgically reference another woman, his ex, wasn't just uncomfortable. It was destabilizing. Some insiders say she heard the clip before the public did. Others say she was in the room. But all agree on one thing. Her expression froze. Not anger, not tears, just a sharp, chilling stillness. The kind that says, "This changes things." Second, Chelsy. Her reaction was quieter, but equally tense. Chelsy doesn't want drama. She doesn't want her name trends. She doesn't want royal echoes interrupting her private life. So when she heard Harry romanticize their past, however unintentionally, she felt something between discomfort and disbelief. Because for her, Harry is a closed chapter. A respected one, but closed. For her, life is simple now. Predictable, balanced, peaceful. Harry's nostalgia threatens that peace. Which brings us to the third reaction, the one that matters most. Sam Cutmore-Scott, the husband, the father, the quiet observer, the protector. Sam's reaction wasn't dramatic. It wasn't jealous. It was instinctive. A man hears a comment like that about his wife from her ex, a global figure, no less. And his first reaction isn't insecurity. It's calculation. Because Sam isn't a celebrity. He isn't a royal. He isn't desperate for publicity. He's a businessman, a strategist, a man who keeps his circle tight and his privacy tighter. And what he heard was a line being crossed. Not sexually, not romantically, emotionally. Every married couple understands this boundary intuitively. Your spouse's past is the past. Your spouse's ex stays in the past. Your spouse's ex certainly doesn't wander verbally back into your present. Especially not from halfway across the world. Especially not on camera. Especially not a prince with a global audience and a flair for emotional volatility. So Sam did what measured men do. He took a breath, assessed the situation, chose his moment, and sent a quiet but firm message through mutual acquaintances. A message that would soon reach Harry and shatter the calm facade around the Sussex household. But before the message landed, something else happened. Something explosive. Because Harry's comment didn't remain private. No, it leaked. A reporter who overheard the conversation. A staffer who relayed it. A friend who whispered it. Someone, no one knows who, passed it on. And the moment the press got it, they knew exactly what they had. A story with emotional firepower. Prince Harry hints he felt most normal with ex Chelsy Davy. The headline spread fast. Too fast. And suddenly, the entire internet was dissecting one sentence. But here's where things get truly interesting. Harry didn't backpedal. He didn't clarify. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to soften it. He doubled down. In another conversation days later, he said, "There were fewer expectations back then. Another slip. Another memory. Another echo of the past." And someone in the royal circle saw both interviews, analyzed both comments, connected both dots. And that's when the unthinkable began. A silent royal intervention, a series of discreet conversations, an internal assessment of Harry's emotional stability. Why? Because to them, Harry revisiting Chelsy emotionally signals something dangerous. A man losing his center of gravity. A man longing for the simplicity he abandoned. A man inadvertently undermining his own marriage. A man accidentally telling the world, "I am not happy." Could that interpretation be wrong? Perhaps. But perception is reality in royal circles. And perception here was disastrous. The royal family stepped in privately. Meghan spiraled emotionally. Chelsy retreated further into silence. Sam drew a line. And Harry? He didn't understand the magnitude of what he'd done. Not yet. Because the real explosion hadn't even happened. Not until Sam's message landed in Montecito. A message that would ignite Harry's fury, destabilize Meghan, and drag Chelsy back into a life she never wanted to revisit. And that message was simple, respectful, unemotional, final. But what came next would transform a private boundary into a full-scale emotional crisis. Who exactly is the man who had the quiet confidence and the moral authority to warn Prince Harry to back off? Who is the man Meghan fears, Harry resents, and insiders say is the one figure Harry never expected to hear from? Who is Sam Cutmore-Scott? The man behind the boundary, the message, the silence that spoke louder than any royal statement? Because here's the truth most people have never considered. When a prince crosses a line, it takes a very specific kind of man to push back. Not loud, not insecure, not attention-seeking, but someone who is everything Harry lost. Someone who has built the life Harry once said he dreamed of, but never found. A life grounded in normalcy, privacy, stability, family, peace. So let's strip away the tabloid caricature and uncover the man at the center of this storm. The man whose quiet warning sent Harry into a fury and triggered a ripple effect across 3 continents. Because Sam Cutmore-Scott isn't just Chelsy's husband. He isn't just a hotelier. He isn't just the man who warned a prince. He is something far more interesting. A mirror. A mirror reflecting everything Harry tried to bury. A mirror reflecting a version of life Harry once had within reach. And let's slip away. But before we get to the message, the confrontation, the fallout, we have to understand the man himself. Where he comes from, how he thinks, why he reacted the way he did, and why Harry's comment didn't just bother him, it activated him. Let's go back to the beginning. Because the story of Sam Cutmore-Scott starts long before he ever met Chelsy Davy. Long before he crossed paths with royalty. Long before he became the man quietly standing between Prince Harry and the peaceful life his wife built. It begins with a family known for something Harry desperately craved. Substance without spectacle. Success without scandal. Wealth without attention. Sam comes from a lineage of business minds. Not aristocrats. Not influencers. Not social climbers. Real builders. Real operators. People who understand the mechanics of responsibility, discipline, and privacy. While other families chase titles or headlines, the Cutmore-Scotts chased impact. Hotels. Investments, work, legacy, no drama, no cameras, no public implosions. And that's the environment Sam grew up in, an environment where attention was a liability, not a reward. Already, you see the contrast with Harry, but the differences go even deeper. Sam is not a man who ever needed validation from strangers. He never sought a global platform. He never tried to reshape an institution or rebrand a monarchy. He never chased influence. And yet, ironically, he ended up holding the one form of influence Harry has never managed to master. Silence. Not passive silence. Strategic silence. The kind of silence only powerful men understand. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is control. Harry shouts. Sam listens. Harry reacts. Sam observes. Harry broadcasts. Sam protects. They are opposites. Absolute, complete, irreconcilable opposites. And that is where the tension truly begins. Let's break down Sam's character in the most important terms. How he measures people. Sam isn't impressed by titles. He respects character. He doesn't care about fame. He cares about integrity. He doesn't chase drama. He avoids it. He is the sort of man who knows exactly who he is, which is precisely the kind of man who terrifies someone like Harry, who has spent years reinventing himself, only to end up uncertain of the result. But what makes Sam so important in this story is not just who he is, it's who Chelsy is with him. Because Chelsy didn't just marry Sam. She built a sanctuary with him. A sanctuary Harry unintentionally cracked with one sentence. Now, let's talk about Chelsy and Sam, because their relationship is the heart of why Sam reacted the way he did. Chelsy met Sam at a point in her life when she was done with chaos, done with scrutiny, done with cameras chasing her every expression, every movement, every friendship. She wanted something real, something gentle, something predictable. Sam offered that. A grounded man, a private life, a partnership built in the quiet moments where no reporters, no palace advisors, no PR teams intrude. He offered her everything Harry couldn't, and deep down, Harry knows that. Sam didn't inherit a throne. He built a foundation, and that difference matters. Because men who build understand the cost of rebuilding what someone else destroys. So when Harry casually ignited a media firestorm around Chelsy's name, Sam didn't panic. He didn't rage. He didn't retaliate. He protected. That is who he is. A protector, not a fighter, not an aggressor, not a competitor, a shield. And the warning he sent Harry wasn't rooted in jealousy. It was rooted in responsibility. To his wife, to his child, to the peace they built. Now let's address something critical. Why didn't Sam confront Harry directly? Because Sam understands the dynamics of power better than Harry ever has. Confronting Harry publicly would create spectacle. Confronting Harry privately, but emotionally, would escalate drama. Confronting Harry directly would feed the story. So Sam used the most effective method. A measured, respectful message delivered through someone whose loyalty cannot be questioned. In other words, he handled it like a man who has nothing to prove. Contrast that with Harry, who lives with something to prove every day. Sam has stability, privacy, respect, a marriage untouched by public spectacle. Harry, meanwhile, has a global spotlight, a fractured family, a brand held together by controversy, a marriage under constant strain. The emotional dynamics here are enormous. Because when a man with everything loses control and a man with stability stands firm, the imbalance becomes visible. And Harry felt it. Deeply. More deeply than he admitted. Because Sam's message didn't just draw a boundary. It forced Harry to confront a truth he has avoided for years. That Chelsy's happiness did not depend on him. That she did not wait for him. That she did not regret leaving him. That the life he once imagined with her now exists, but without him. And the man she chose is the kind of man Harry used to wish he could be. Grounded, stable, unbothered, self-assured, unmoved by public opinion. This tension is the beating heart of the conflict. Sam is not Harry's enemy. He is not Harry's rival. He is not trying to replace anything or anyone. He is a man doing what real men do. Protect their family without creating a scene. Harry, ironically, is the one who created the scene. Harry is the one who reopened a closed chapter. Harry is the one who triggered emotional tremors. Harry is the one who destabilized his own marriage with a single nostalgic slip. But here's the twist. Sam's message wasn't the only boundary in play. Behind the scenes, something else was happening. Something that would take this situation from awkward tension to full-blown emotional volatility. Because Sam may have sent the warning, but he wasn't the only one watching Harry closely. And the next reaction came from someone far more connected to Harry's past. Someone who understood exactly what this slip revealed about his emotional state. Someone who knows Harry's patterns better than his therapists, his wife, or his PR team. And that reaction? It wasn't quiet. It wasn't calm. It wasn't diplomatic. It was a wake-up call, one that pushed Harry deeper into defensiveness and triggered the emotional spiral that would define the rest of this story. But the moment that reaction surfaced, that's when the real unraveling began. And what came next would push Harry over the edge. And no one saw it coming. Because here's the part of the story that most people never hear. When Harry slips emotionally, William notices instantly. Not because he's judging Harry. Not because he wants to control him. But because William has spent his entire life watching Harry cycle through hope, chaos, nostalgia, rebellion, self-sabotage, and regret. He has seen this pattern repeat itself so many times that he recognizes the earliest signs with eerie accuracy. And when the clip of Harry mentioning Chelsy reached William, his reaction wasn't outrage. It was disappointment, silent, heavy, calculating. The kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than anger ever could. Because William knew exactly what the comment meant. He understood that this wasn't about Chelsy at all. This was about Harry unraveling emotionally, reaching back toward a life that existed long before everything went wrong. William read the comment the way only an older brother could. He saw beneath the surface. He saw nostalgia. He saw longing. He saw pain. He saw instability. He saw a man running from his reality and trying to escape into a past version of himself that no longer exists. So William did something that shook Harry in a way Sam never could. He reached out. Not directly, not dramatically, but through quiet channels. Exactly the way the palace prefers things to be handled. A senior aide contacted someone within Harry's orbit. Not to scold him, not to lecture him, but to pass along a message that was subtle yet devastating. Your brother believes you are struggling. 6 words. 6 simple words. But those 6 words pierced Harry deeper than Sam's entire boundary-setting message. Because Harry can dismiss Sam. He can dismiss Meghan. He can dismiss the press. He can even dismiss public criticism. But William? William is the one voice Harry can never silence internally. That's the tragedy. That's the paradox. That's the wound that never healed. And when Harry heard that William believed he was slipping emotionally, something cracked inside him. He lashed out. Not at William. He wouldn't dare. Not at Meghan. Not directly. Not at Chelsy. She wasn't at fault. He lashed out at the situation. At himself. At the reminder that the people he ran from still understood him better than the people he ran to. And that realization triggered a new wave of emotional volatility. Because Harry has spent years trying to prove he is strong, stable, healed, independent. But William's assessment, just 6 quiet words, told him the opposite. You haven't changed. And for a man who built a global identity around the idea of rebirth, reinvention, and escape, that truth was unbearable. Let's step back and zoom out for a moment. Because the emotional math here is crucial. Sam's message equals boundary. Meghan's reaction equals insecurity plus fear. Chelsy's response equals withdrawal. William's observation equals exposure. Harry felt overwhelmed, cornered, misunderstood. And when a man feels cornered emotionally, what does he do? He either shuts down or explodes. Harry exploded. Not publicly, not yet, but privately, inside the walls of his Montecito home. Those closest to the Sussex household say Harry spent days pacing, venting, muttering to himself, picking arguments over nothing, revisiting old grievances, blaming the press, blaming the palace, blaming people who don't understand him. But deep down, he wasn't angry at any of them. He was angry at the truth. He triggered the storm. He said the words. He cracked the door open. He resurrected a ghost. He created pressure on his wife. He disrupted Chelsy's peace. He provoked a husband. He invited royal scrutiny. He revealed a fragility he tried to hide. And when a man feels responsible for chaos he didn't intend, he spirals. But the spiral wasn't just emotional. It was symbolic. Because the men in this story represent something deeper about Harry's life. Sam represents the life Harry wanted but couldn't keep. William represents the family Harry fled but cannot escape. Meghan represents the future Harry chose but sometimes questions. And Harry himself represents a man caught in the space between them, without an anchor. But now we need to understand why Sam's reaction carried so much weight. Because the surface explanation, that Sam was protecting Chelsy, is only half the truth. The deeper truth is this. Sam understands Harry's emotional volatility better than Harry realizes. He doesn't need to know Harry personally to understand the type of damage Harry's words can cause. Sam has observed Harry publicly for years. Not as a fan, not as a critic, but as a strategist. He knows that Harry is unpredictable. He knows Harry makes impulsive public statements. He knows Harry uses emotion as a form of communication. He knows Harry leans on nostalgia when under pressure. So when Harry said Chelsy's name, Sam didn't hear affection. He heard instability. And instability is exactly what he refuses to let into his family. This is the crucial difference between Sam and Harry. Sam is a man who learned early how to manage pressure. Harry spent his entire life being managed. Sam is a man who built a life from scratch. Harry inherited an institution he couldn't escape. Sam is a man who guards his privacy. Harry alternates between craving privacy and exposing his own life. Sam is a man who moves with intention. Harry moves with emotion. And that emotional movement, that impulse, was the very thing Sam needed to block from entering his home. This is why his message was so calm, so precise, so firm. He knew exactly what he had to say to close the door once and for all. And yet, ironically, it opened a different door. It forced Harry to confront the one truth he didn't want to face. That Chelsy has a life that is not just separate from him. It is protected from him. And the man protecting that life is everything Harry's critics claim he is not. Stable, steady, grounded, respected, private, and self-assured. Harry hates that comparison, not because he dislikes Sam, but because he envies him. He envies the stability. He envies the peace. He envies the anonymity. He envies the relationship unburdened by global pressure. And deep down, very deep, he envies the fact that Chelsy found all of that with someone else. Now here's where things turn even more volatile. Because Sam's boundary didn't end the issue. It amplified it. Harry felt targeted, misinterpreted, cornered. He started defending himself to everyone around him. Started insisting he didn't mean anything romantic. Started insisting the press exaggerated. Started insisting Sam misunderstood him. But the more he insisted, the more obvious it became. The comment wasn't about Chelsy. It was about Harry's emotional state. Everyone around him saw it, except him. And that's when Meghan stepped in. Not with anger this time, not with cold distance, but with fear. Because Meghan has one fear greater than bad press, greater than palace criticism, greater than public backlash. Losing control of her narrative. And Harry's emotional unraveling, triggered by nostalgia, pressure, and Sam's boundary, risked unraveling everything they built in America. This is where the chapter darkens. Because Meghan confronted Harry. Someone who had the power to trigger an emotional explosion that neither Sam nor Meghan saw coming. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. Here's the question that sits at the center of this entire storm. The question Harry himself can't answer. The question Meghan fears. The question Sam understands instinctively. And the question Chelsy quietly avoids. Why can't Prince Harry let go of a woman who has let go of him completely? Why does her name linger in his interviews, in his memories, in his emotional vocabulary, like a ghost he never managed to put to rest? Because if you want to understand why Sam Cutmore-Scott stepped in with a warning, if you want to understand why Meghan felt threatened, if you want to understand why the royal family paid attention, you first need to understand Chelsy Davy's life now, the life Harry once glimpsed but never earned. And the truth is this. Chelsy built the life Harry always said he wanted. But she built it without him. And that fact haunts him. Not consciously, not romantically, emotionally, deep in the part of him he can't control. So let's step into her world. Let's step into the quiet, controlled, private universe Chelsy created after walking away from royal chaos, and why that universe stands in brutal contrast to Harry's life today. Because once you see what Chelsy has built, you'll understand why her peace is the one thing Harry can't seem to stop referencing. Even unintentionally, even now, even after all these years, even after marriage, children, and a new identity built across the Atlantic. Let's begin. Chelsy lives a life defined by one word: normalcy. And to most people, normal sounds boring, predictable, uneventful. But to someone who spent years orbiting the royal machine, normal is sacred. Chelsy wasn't raised in a palace. She wasn't molded by PR teams. She wasn't trained for cameras or pageantry. She grew up with freedom, sun, space, horses, family, silence, privacy. Her world was real, not curated, not choreographed, not performative. And when she entered Harry's world, that realness became her shield, until the cameras shattered it. Because dating a prince meant losing the element she valued most: autonomy. Suddenly, every smile was analyzed, every movement stalked, every outfit critiqued, every friend photographed, every mistake immortalized. And Chelsy tried. She genuinely tried. She tried to be understanding, tried to be patient, tried to be resilient, tried to be supportive. But it wasn't the life she was built for. And Harry, back then, wasn't the man who could protect her from that world. He was still struggling with it himself. So when she left him, it wasn't because the love wasn't real. It was because the life wasn't survivable. Fast forward to today. Chelsy is married to a man who shares her values, a man who protects her peace, a man who does not live in the spotlight, A man who believes privacy is not a privilege, but a requirement for happiness. That man is Sam Cutmore-Scott. Together, they've built a world the Crown could never have offered her. A world where she can walk down the street without being followed, where she can raise her child without fear, where her name is not global currency, where her marriage is not a public drama. Imagine that. Imagine going from global headlines to complete anonymity. Imagine stepping away from a future as a princess and choosing a life where no one knows what you're wearing, who you're texting, or where you're dining. Imagine the relief. And that relief is something Harry has never truly felt. Because Harry didn't choose privacy. He chased attention. He monetized exposure. He fueled controversy. He stepped into a larger spotlight than the monarchy ever gave him. And here's the contradiction that makes this story so emotionally potent. Harry says he ran from a life of scrutiny, but his life today is built entirely on being visible. Books, interviews, series, documentaries, lawsuits, headlines, controversies, speeches, podcasts, appearances. Everything about him is public consumption. He escaped the palace, only to build a newer, louder stage. Chelsy, meanwhile, quietly stepped off the stage completely. And this is where the emotional tension becomes unmistakable. Harry looks back at the years with Chelsy not because he misses her, but because he misses who he was with her. She was the last person who knew him before the world turned him into a symbol, before he became divided, politicized, weaponized, and globally dissected. Chelsy represented simplicity, authenticity, sunlight, freedom, youth, playfulness, possibility. Harry represented trauma, duty, tragedy, fame, pressure, expectations. She was light. He was weight. And in her presence, he felt like a boy again. Not a prince, not an icon, not a victim, not a spokesperson, not a brand. And that feeling, that rare, disappearing feeling, is what he referenced when he spoke. That normal moment wasn't about Chelsy. It was about the version of himself he lost. But Chelsy is not a memory trapped in the past. She is a wife, a mother, a businesswoman, a woman who worked hard to reclaim her life after royal chaos nearly broke her. And Sam understands that deeply. He didn't marry Harry's ex. He married a woman shaped by trauma she didn't ask for, trauma she never wanted. And that trauma returned the second Harry said her name on camera. Let's explore how that moment reached Chelsy. According to insiders, she didn't see the clip first. A friend did. A friend who texted her. Harry mentioned you again. Not complimented you. Not talked about old times. Not shared a memory. Mentioned you. A small phrase, but a heavy one. Chelsy's reaction was instant. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just tight. A long exhale. A look down. A shake of the head. Not because she was flattered. Not because she was hurt. But because she knew what would follow. The tabloids. The speculation. The headlines. The comments. The invasion. The resurfacing of a life she walked away from. And here's the part Harry doesn't understand. Chelsy isn't angry at him. She isn't afraid of him. She isn't resentful. She isn't bitter. She's tired. Tired of being dragged back into a story she left behind. Tired of having her name used as a mirror for Harry's emotional instability. Tired of being the one who got away when she has clearly moved on. And Sam noticed this immediately. He didn't need her to explain. He knows her reactions. He knows when she's unsettled. He knows when something disturbs her calm. He watched her face tighten, watched her posture shift, watched her protectiveness sharpen, not out of fear, but out of caution. And in that moment, he decided, this ends. No more royal echoes. No more tabloid storms. No more Harry slipping emotionally and dragging Chelsy with him. And that's when Sam delivered the message that would infuriate Harry. But the message wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about rivalry. It was about preservation. Because Sam knows, better than any man, what it took for Chelsy to regain her peace. She lost it once because of Harry. She will not lose it again because of him. Now let's talk about something very few people ever consider. How Chelsy sees Harry today. Not Harry from 2007. Not Harry from the army years. Not Harry from the nightclub photos. Not the fun Harry. The Harry of today. The Harry who lives in Montecito. The Harry who makes documentaries about trauma. The Harry who goes to war with the press weekly. The Harry who sues governments. The Harry who speaks publicly about family betrayal. The Harry whose marriage is constantly analyzed. The Harry who is visibly restless, visibly reactive, visibly uncertain. Chelsy sees all of that. And what she feels isn't longing. It's gratitude. Gratitude that she walked away in time. Not because Harry isn't lovable, but because the life he lives now is even more chaotic than the life she fled. Imagine that. She left because the royal world was too overwhelming. Today, Harry has built a world louder than royalty ever was. This isn't an insult. It's an emotional truth. Harry's life is full of noise. Chelsy's life is full of quiet. Harry's world depends on attention. Chelsy's world depends on absence of attention. Harry's identity is public. Chelsy's identity is private. So when she hears him speak about their past, she doesn't melt. She doesn't reminisce. She doesn't ache. She contracts, because it reminds her of a life she survived. And that is exactly why Sam stepped forward. Not to confront Harry, not to challenge him, not to insult him, but to protect a woman who clawed her way out of the very spotlight Harry keeps reigniting. Sam understands something fundamental. The past is not Harry's enemy. The past is Chelsy's wound. And Harry reopening that wound, even unintentionally, required intervention. Now here's where the emotional tension deepens. Harry doesn't understand this. Not fully. Not yet. To him, mentioning Chelsy was nostalgia. Warm, harmless, sentimental. To Chelsy, it was disruption. Unwanted, intrusive, threatening to her peace. To Sam, it was a boundary violation. Not of romance, but of privacy. But the person who took it the hardest? Meghan. Because if Chelsy represents Harry's untroubled past, Meghan represents his turbulent present. And nothing terrifies Meghan more than the past seeming simpler than the life she built with him. And so as Harry spirals, and Meghan panics, and Sam protects, and Chelsy withdraws, the tension finally converges into a sharp, undeniable truth. Harry can't let go of the version of himself he was with Chelsy, because that version was the last time he felt whole. And the man who replaced him in Chelsy's life is the man Harry fears he'll never become. Stable, secure, content, at peace. But what happens when Harry's internal conflict collides with his marriage, and with Sam's boundary, and with Chelsy's silence? What happens is this. Harry makes a reckless move, a move that sends shockwaves, a move that ignites tension on both sides of the Atlantic, a move that proves Sam was right to intervene. And what Harry does next, no one saw coming. So what reckless move did Harry make? What did he do? Quietly, impulsively, emotionally. That proved Sam's boundary wasn't paranoia, but prophecy. Here's the moment. Harry reached out. Not directly to Chelsy. No, he wasn't that reckless. Not publicly. He's not foolish enough to trigger a tabloid explosion on purpose. And not in a way that could be traced back to him easily. But he did reach back into the past. To someone who once connected their worlds. Someone with ties to both him and Chelsy. Someone who, in Harry's mind, could clarify things, smooth things over, explain the situation. Except that's not what happened at all. And the moment this person responded, Meghan realized something terrifying. Harry wasn't reminiscing about Chelsy. He was trying to reopen emotional territory he had no business revisiting. Let's slow down. Let's go step by step. Because this moment is the emotional fulcrum of the entire story. The point at which the lines between past and present blur, and where Harry reveals something he didn't intend. He's not in control. Here's how it unfolded. After days of tension inside the Sussex home, after Meghan's questions, after Sam's warning, after Chelsy's retreat, after William's quiet observation, Harry felt cornered, misunderstood, judged. And when men feel misunderstood, they often try to set the record straight. That's exactly what Harry attempted. He reached out to a mutual acquaintance, someone who had known both him and Chelsy during their relationship, someone who was neutral, trustworthy, and had years of distance from the royal drama. The message wasn't long, wasn't emotional, wasn't dramatic. It was simple. I hope Chelsy doesn't think I meant anything inappropriate. Please make sure she knows I meant no disrespect. Sounds innocent, right? Wrong. Because intention is complicated. Emotion is layered. And Harry's subconscious motives weren't as innocent as he wanted them to be. He wasn't trying to reassure Chelsy. He was trying to reassure himself. He was trying to control the narrative of a past he no longer had access to. Trying to prevent a boundary from becoming a wall. Trying to ease the tension he caused. Not because Chelsy needed reassurance, but because he did. And that's the part Meghan saw immediately. She recognized the emotional pattern. Harry wanted closure, validation, appeasement, reassurance. But closure from whom? Not his wife, not his brother, not his therapist, not the press. From Chelsy, even if indirectly. That is what terrified Meghan. Not because she thought Harry wanted Chelsy back. Not because she feared he was cheating. Not because she suspected romantic motives. She feared something worse. Harry still sees Chelsy as part of his emotional compass. That is what shook her, because Meghan knows, and always has known, that she can control the narrative, control the interviews, control the messaging, control the PR, control the brand. But she cannot control Harry's subconscious. She cannot control the version of himself that he misses. She cannot control the emotional imprint Chelsy left. She cannot control the past that shaped his identity. And that past resurfaced the moment Harry sent that message. But what happened next is even more explosive. Because the acquaintance, the one Harry reached out to, did not respond the way Harry expected. Instead of reassuring him, they said something that hit him harder than Sam's warning, harder than Meghan's confrontation, harder even than William's observation. Their exact words, according to insiders: Chelsy is happy. She doesn't think about the past. A neutral statement. A polite statement. A perfectly reasonable statement. But for Harry, it felt like a verdict. A final door closing. A chapter truly ending. A life continuing without him. And he spiraled. Because this wasn't just information. It was something far more brutal. Confirmation. Confirmation that Chelsy was not affected by his comment. Confirmation that she wasn't longing. Confirmation that she wasn't nostalgic. Confirmation that she wasn't wounded. Confirmation that she wasn't thinking about him at all. And that cut deep. Because Harry still thinks about his past. He still excavates it. Still lives in it. Still analyzes it. Still references it. Still uses it as a shield and as a story. Chelsy, meanwhile, she lives in her present. Her family. Her marriage, her child, her work, her peace. She has no need to revisit the past because the past didn't define her. But Harry? The past is his brand. That's where the torment lies. He escaped the monarchy, but never escaped memory. He escaped the palace, but never escaped nostalgia. He escaped his role, but never escaped his wounds. And Chelsy's lack of reaction, her total disinterest, revealed something Harry wasn't prepared to face. She healed without him. She closed the chapter. She grew beyond that world. She doesn't replay the story. She doesn't romanticize it. She doesn't connect her identity to him. And this is the part Meghan feared Harry would discover. Because a man discovering that his past love has no emotional residue left for him can do one of two things. He can accept it, or he can unravel. Harry unraveled. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally. And that's where the real problem began. Because what Harry heard wasn't, she's moved on. What he heard was, she doesn't need you. And when a man built on the emotional scaffolding of loss hears that, it makes every unresolved insecurity roar back to life. This is when Harry's emotional spiral collided directly with Meghan's fear. She saw him pacing, saw him overthinking, saw him replaying the message, saw him muttering under his breath, saw him scrolling news coverage, saw him wrestling with old ghosts. She saw a man emotionally slipping through her fingers, not to another woman, but to another version of himself. A version she cannot compete with. A version she cannot reshape. A version she cannot rebrand. A version she cannot erase. A version she cannot own. And that version was tied to Chelsy. Not the woman. The piece. And that is what Sam understood the moment the clip surfaced. That is why he stepped in. That is why he sent the warning. He wasn't protecting Chelsy from Harry's affection. He was protecting her from Harry's emotional instability. Meanwhile, Harry interpreted the warning as an attack. Meghan interpreted the reaction as a threat. Chelsy interpreted the moment as a burden. Sam interpreted the situation as a responsibility. And all four interpretations collided into the tension you're reading now. But the story takes its most dramatic turn next. Because after Harry spiraled quietly, and Meghan confronted him, and the acquaintance delivered their neutral but crushing message, Chelsy herself did something unexpected. Something subtle. Something small. Something gentle. But something that set off an emotional detonation in Montecito. And what Chelsy did next, or rather, what she didn't do, would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What if I told you the real explosion didn't begin with Harry's comment at all, but with a dinner party? Not a royal banquet, not a celebrity gala, not a high-profile fundraiser. A simple dinner party in London. Quiet, intimate, elegant, and attended by people who prefer whispers to headlines. A dinner party where a single sentence from across the Atlantic suddenly became the center of a conversation no one was prepared for. Because sometimes drama doesn't begin on a stage. Sometimes it begins in a room full of people holding wine glasses and secrets. And this dinner, this seemingly ordinary evening, became the turning point. It was the moment when a whisper became a warning, when a comment became a problem, when private boundaries became public information, when Sam Cutmore-Scott decided he was done being polite about Harry's emotional spillover. It was the moment the circle around Chelsy realized. Harry is slipping, and he doesn't realize who he's disturbing. Let me take you inside that room. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. A long oak table, soft lighting, the muffled hum of London traffic outside. Expensive wine poured by someone who knows how to balance a bottle without a drip. Conversations flowing about business, children, travel, grown-up life topics. No drama, no spectacle, no media attention, just calm.